Blessings from the Madison Institute, beloved brothers and sisters. Earlier today, we have presented Ezekiel chapter 38, among other biblical texts, but later on, upon the investigation, upon a more profound investigation, the Lord has revealed some extra details which could show how the history of the war could develop. First, in Matthew 24, it says in verse 6, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." And then in verse 7 it says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." So in verse 6, it speaks of, at first, of wars and rumors of wars. But then, we have a different stage. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And famines, pestilences, earthquakes. All these are the beginning of sorrows. This description in verse 7 has not taken place yet. Better said, it has not reached its climax, because it is a process. In the future, many nations are to be involved in a war. Not only Russia and Ukraine and another one or two allies. In the other audios, we have likened Russia to Egypt because it fits Egypt's description, and Putin also resembles Pharaoh. For example, Pharaoh who lied every time and didn't let Moses and the Israelites, he didn't let them go, even though he promised to do so many times. Who didn't have any mercy and who was a tyrant, just like we have in Russia. Pharaoh, who owned the land of Egypt, his own people were his servants, and in Russia there is no freedom of speech, and everyone who speaks against the war or protests against the war is arrested. of another pharaoh. The Bible says he was proud. He lifted himself up in his heart. But this time in Ezekiel 38, we have a different history. We have GOG, who was the king of MAGOG. We have all over in the Bible messages from the prophets for the warring nations, even for conflicts that didn't involve Israel. There were messages for these countries, prophecies, which have especially been recorded for the last days. They are a pattern to understand what will take place in the last days. Because the Lord doesn't do anything without revealing it to his prophets. To be a prophet is not necessarily to have visions. John the Baptist doesn't have any visions recorded, but he entered the covenant by sacrifice when he was young. He accepted his mission fully. He left his family and went into the wilderness. He is our example. He was the second Elijah, and the 144,000 need to be the third Elijah. And he had a mission and a message and a consecrated life. And the Lord can use people who fulfill these conditions to understand more about the prophecies and what is to take place in the future. The entire people of the 144,000 will be a people of prophets. Now, a few hours after presenting Ezekiel 38, Brother Doru investigated the countries presented here in Ezekiel 38 and discovered a pattern that has not changed. He looked at each one of these countries to see where they would be situated today, which countries would they represent. When he investigated how the children and grandchildren of Noah have spread around the world, he encountered a list with these countries showing which was which in the present. And interestingly enough, Magog is the Soviet Union and Mongolia. And Mesech is a region in Moscow. And Tubal is Russia and Tibet and a part of India. In the photos which will be shared, one can see Noah's children and grandchildren who formed anciently the main 70 nations of the world. And the Lord presents what will take place in a manner that those who dedicate time and prayer, effort to study will be able to understand. Just like the pioneers in the past, when they wanted to know something, when they were investigating, they were fasting, they were studying in group, because an individual study is not secure, because it says that in the multitude of the counselors there is safety. So these are clues that can show us the pattern of the past, which will repeat itself, as we shall see in this audio. So for now we have Soviet Union, MAGOG, and Mongolia, and Moscow, Russia, Tibet, and a small part of India. Then we have Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, which are countries situated around Egypt of today. And when it speaks about Gomer and all his bands, Gomer is China, and it is properly said all his bands, which means many armies, because China has a great army. Togarma is Vietnam and Laos. So we see we have here countries which will be involved. And let us see how. In verse 4 it says to Gog and Magog, I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, even a great company. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarma, and all his bands, and many people with thee. So Magog was the main, the principal, because all these other nations were with Magog. And in 7 it says, Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited in the latter years. Which is a reference to the last days of the history of these 6,000 years. And what will this alliance of nations with MAGOG, which is Russia, as its head, will do? It says that after many days you shall come into the land that is brought back from the sword, against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Notice that it says many people with thee. It doesn't speak of an alliance of 4 nations. It says many people. And we can tell that in that region of Russia and China, if only Russia and China and India unite, well, these represent 3 billion people, all nuclear powers. The other small countries will not be able to oppose them, and will not be able to stay neutral. Also, there are many who do not want for the United States to bring down their regimes, and would rather unite with Russia. Now let us see what GOG of MAGOG had in mind. It says in verse 10, It shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. Or an alternate translation offered in the King James, it says, or conceive a mischievous purpose, an evil plan. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates. We have talked about Israel, that Ukraine fits the description, because it is a country that chose agriculture. It is a country that has not united neither with NATO nor Russia. It has been separate, and basically it is a country who wanted peace, did not want war. And this is the description given here. Israel was a land without walls, unwalled villages. They dwelled safely, without walls, having neither bars nor gates. It shows that it speaks about peoples that are not interested in war, that have not concentrated in expending so much on growing their armies or buying arms. This was a peaceful country, and we know that our Lord, when it came to the individuals, in his eyes, the woman from Samaria, the Roman Cornelius, and others, in his eyes they were Israel. He even said that he could not find such faith even in Israel. And the writings of the Spirit of Prophecy state that these were lost sheep of Israel as well, because it was Israel's responsibility to preach the gospel to these people. So Israel represents those that the nations, according to this description, who wanted to live in peace. Can we see that right now? Well, in Ukraine, upon the retreat of the Russian troops, there are videos on the internet showing that the Russian troops had invaded the Ukrainian homes and in different situations tortured and killed or simply executed the civilian owners. They robbed, they plundered the places. This was not a military operation. And in their retreat, they left mines, mines in homes, mines in corpses. This was not a peaceful retreat or a retreat from a military operation. They left mines that can kill children or anyone. In verse 15 it says, "And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army." And in verse 16, "And thou shalt come up against my people of Israel, as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days." So we can see that this is for the last days. It is for our generation. This history is for our generation. And then we can see MAGOG's chastisement. Well, the main idea of this audio is that most of the times we look at names, be it names of countries or of people, and do not give them much importance. But they are important. In case of countries, we can see which countries they represent. And we have personal experiences, friends, for example, who the Lord showed them where they needed to be upon asking Him where should they go, and He showed them one of these names that countries had, and they looked on the map and they saw, and it was just another witness for them, because this was just a confirmation for them, because they had already gotten in that country, and they just wanted to know for sure. The Lord also speaks through names of persons. For example, Methuselah. His name was a prophecy that when he would die, in that same year, the flood, Noah's flood, was going to take place. Names are very important in the Bible. They are a rich source of information, so let us not pass them by easily. Now, these events described here have not taken place because there is no alliance yet between Russia and many nations. No alliance between, no official alliance in time of war between Russia and China. They are under a treaty, so to say, in agreement. China's president has told Putin that he will help him. He told him that in the past, that he will support him. In China, the people are told that what Russia does is a military operation. So they are being told the same lie, and China refuses to condemn the invasion. So we see that China right now is just thinking about not losing its relations to the United States and Europe, because it does a lot more trade with this part of the world than with Russia. But if it finds itself under sanctions just like Russia, or some trigger event which might take place, China can easily officially be on the side of Russia. And what would the small countries around them do? Would they dare to oppose these two great countries that have so much military might? And if India would join them as well, that would be a very, very strong alliance. But right now, this is just the beginning. We have seen gradually these alliances form. In the beginning, there was just Russia and Belarusia, then the Chechens who joined, then Serbia who declared to be on the side of Russia, Cuba, and gradually each one will take sides. There will be wars, and we all know who will come to the rescue, who will say that he has the solution to stop all of this. Wars, a short time of peace, because when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction shall come upon them. We thank the Lord for His word and for leaving us so many clues that we might not walk in the darkness and be caught by surprise by the events which are to come. May the Lord bless Israel over the wide face of the earth.